when you break it down, Elizabeth never really says no and never like shoves him or fights him off. And within a few seconds, she loves what's happening. And she gives herself and sings. And so you have to kind of latch onto that as sort of like, okay, this is why it's not as bad as we might think, even though it's kind of bad.
Right. That's exactly what I thought when I was watching it, where I was like, she's putting up a fight, but it's very much a staged fight.
Right.
Like she's a girl that's like, oh, what? Me? No, I would never do a thing like that. I'm a perfect little innocent angel. When in fact, you f***ed everyone.
Right. Right.
So
okay, I wanted to ask you that female perspective, and I should probably wait till we get into this because I actually got called out by a couple of other female listeners saying she does not sleep around. She's just a socialite, but I'm like, are you kidding me? How do you miss all the clues?
She sleeps with everyone.
Yes, everyone but Freddy.
Yep. Exactly. And that's because she doesn't really like him. And I don't know why she's with him.
Freddy,
I'm glad they didn't end up together.
Freddy is the step up the social ladder. He's the prestigious doctor working out of Johns Hopkins University as both a professor and a brilliant surgeon. It's all about the show. It has nothing to do with love. It's all about the socialite, making her move on the ladder.
She doesn't want to be with someone with hair like that.
No. All right.
I don't want to be with someone with hair like that. And I'm not. I don't do my hair at all.
Inside this room, all of my dreams become realities, and some of my realities become dreams.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here? Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You are listening to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. Here are your hosts, Alan Sanders and Walt Murray.
Welcome back, everyone, to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute, a podcast where we are breaking down and celebrating the film Young Frankenstein, one sweetly sung Trasylvanian lullaby at a time. I'm your host. I'm Alan Sanders.
I am your co-host, Walt Murray.
And joining us once again here on Hump Day, we've got Crystal Beth. Thanks for being able to come on back.
Thank you so much for having me here again.
Well, we started off with you yesterday, finishing up in the lab and ending with what looked like the beginning of a honeymoon. So let's remind the audience, minute here 103. We start off with Inga now saying, Mrs. Frankenstein, what a beautiful name. And we'll end with Inga singing off stage, but it's a familiar tune and it seems to have a strange effect on the doctor. So let's kick this off with Crystal Beth, who, well, she just got introduced to Young Frankenstein, so we'll probably hit a lot of other pieces of the movie along the way. But as it relates to this scene, the playfulness here and sort of the sweet sensuality. Talk for a moment about Terry Garr being the perfect, I think, wife for Gene Wilder's Frankenstein.
I think she's just kinky enough. I think he needs a little bit of that kink after being with Elizabeth, who refused to touch him, which is just so funny, but also so awful. This poor guy.
Yeah, the only thing she offers up is a rub of the elbow.
But, however, so when I was watching this, like I said, I didn't know anything going into it. And, in movies, usually the love interest twists a little bit. But when they rubbed elbows in unison without needing to really talk about it, I was like, oh, they're weirdos together. Because she, as opposed to being a bossy socialite, which is pretty much what she is, she just seems neurotic. And he's neurotic. So I was like, oh, okay, so they're both neurotic people, and she doesn't like to be touched, and he doesn't like to be called Frankenstein. So I guess that fits. And then when you see him kind of go away from her or walk away from her a little bit later, where he looks upset, like a little sad, I was like, oh, no, she's not just neurotic. It's kind of mean. And then you start to realize, who she is and stuff. But I think that Inga is just the perfect little addition to his life. And we spoke about it last week. She's always there for him when he needed her, and it just blossoms into a really nice relationship and mutually respected, it seems like.
The word we use with Inga a lot, or Terry Garr's even performance, we find her to be sort of that genuine. She's not out for any other thing, out for any ulterior motive or some other gain. She seems to be there for him. And it comes across as genuine. It comes across as, I don't know, something that we all hope that we can find in our own lives.
Yeah. And, because we learned that she just lost her parents, doesn't have anyone, and just gets thrown into this almost servant relationship because he was I think Igor said her parents just died, and now she's just going to come with us because she has nowhere else to be. So she's all of a sudden thrown, and she could be this like meek, shy, oh yes, sir. But she holds her own, and she's like, no, I'm important too. And whatever you do, I'm going to go with you, like into the dark and the scary little secret passageway. And she was never ditzy. She was never in the way. She let him do what he wanted to do, but when she needed to have a hand in it, she did. And it's cute. Like she's a good character. Especially for this day and age when this film was made, a lot of women were just ditzy. They were accessories to the men.
You're either going to get painted as the witch or you're going to be painted as the ditzy blonde, with the little... and that just would not have worked.
Yep.
In many ways, although she does show the softer side, her femininity comes through. She does, like, she'll put her shoulder into the bookshelf when she needs to help free him. She's willing to, do what she needs to for the doctor. She's willing to work the wheel. Talk about, playing equal.
Well, she helped tackle the monster when they were
right.
They had him in the cargo net. She is not afraid to get her hands dirty.
She's every bit, talk about empowering as a female character. And I think it's a great breakout role for Terry Garr. This really was that role that put her on the map. She'd been in a couple of things, but prior to this, she'd been, the dancer in the background of beach movies or an Elvis movie, but she really didn't have this kind of like acceptance of her ability as an actress until after Young Frankenstein, and people saw, wow, there's a depth to her, there's a playfulness to her, there's a silliness to her, but she can also be serious, and she can be caring and show a pretty good wide range of emotions across what's supposed to be a comedy.
This has to set her apart as a very strong woman. In the roles you see her in later, she is very strong. She plays some really tough roles and does them really well. I just think about her as the wife in Close Encounters.
Right.
She's got another neurotic husband who's going wacko, but she is kind of the rock in that family.
And doesn't understand what he's going through, but realizes, I got to put my kids first. I've got to protect, because, who believes in UFOs, right? This is, you're watching your husband go crazy. Right. And it's a wonderful performance. And
it is. Yeah. And I don't know what steps got her there, but I would assume that this movie had to get her on the path to doing those kind of roles because she is so strong in this.
Well, I guarantee that played a huge part because the two biggest blockbusters of 1974 both just happened to be Mel Brooks films. Yeah. Blazing Saddles back in February, and this came out in December, and this was off the chain, and everyone went to go see this movie, and it was out for months and months. This is a different time than today where you've got 50 movies showing at your local Cineplex. It was, this movie ran for months and months and months, and it was one of the biggest blockbusters of the year.
Yeah, and you also didn't go see this and then wait 2 months to get it on Blu-ray.
No, you had to go back to the theater to see it again.
And once it was out of the theater, it was gone until it showed up on NBC.
Right, until TV.
Oh, man, I missed that. When movies were fleeting, you couldn't really hold on to them.
This is a movie that I don't know, I'm sure you have these around you, Crystal, but we have these Fathom events from time to time that come through the movie theaters where they take an old classic and it will play a couple of days in your local theater. They'll reserve one of maybe the smaller theaters, and you get a chance to sometimes go see a movie that maybe as growing up you only saw on TV or video or DVD. But to see this on the big screen is something I have yet to ever do.
Well, if you're in Denver, Colorado, it is showing at Harkins Northfield 18 and Harkins Arvada 14 tonight at 7 p.m.
Oh. Well, hey, if I could just catch a flight. Wait, hold on. I'm sure it'll come around because didn't you go see it, Walt, a couple of years ago?
I did, yeah. And it was
it for the 40th anniversary?
A Fathom event, or if it was at one of the other theaters.
One of the other groups that do that.
Yeah. And, around that same time, I saw Batman 66. And
Talk about a bad movie.
Oh yeah, it was terrible, but it was great. It was one of those terribly great movies. And there was a lady in there. We were talking to this group as we were getting ready to leave. This lady was 89. She had taken her kids to see it when it originally came out, and so she had her kids with her and her grandkids.
Wow.
So you have 3 generations of people going to see that great movie. And the next time this one comes around, I'm taking my kids, and if I can drag my dad and his wife along, we're going to make a family outing of this because it is such a great movie.
Now, I don't know if you saw this on YouTube, but there's some clips where Leonard Maltin, when it was the 40th, I think it was the 40th anniversary showing, and they brought some of the surviving cast members of Young Frankenstein on stage, and Cloris Leachman was actually talking about her role, and she addresses her granddaughter in the audience because she's like, you're probably not going to know what knockers are, so let me explain.
My granddaughter is here tonight, and she doesn't know what knockers means in either case, so I want to tell her.
Don't tell her.
Hallelujah, where are you?
Yeah. Hallelujah, that's your name?
That's her name.
Hallelujah, where are you? Stand up.
I want to tell you what knockers means.
Oh, yeah. She is standing. It's my little
knockers are knockers, like on a door. You knock on the door, knock, 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 knock. And they're also a term for breasts. Knockers.
Now you know.
In the movie, you'll see a joke about that.
It's a very good time for you to explain that.
Right.
Well, she's only 9.
So, an evening that is not only amusing but educational. That's what we give you here at the Academy.
She's out in front of the audience. I'm trying to imagine a 9-year-old. My grandmother's talking about knockers.
I love Cloris Leachman. She's so funny.
Oh, she's amazing. And I think in many ways, she is one of the bright lights of this movie.
Well, is there a dull light in this movie?
No.
I mean, when you think about it, we had a stellar cast at every level. I mean, every single level. Even Madeline Kahn, who, Crystal, I don't know if you knew this, our audience that has been with us since the beginning knew this, that actually the part of Inga was offered to Madeline Kahn. Madeline Kahn said, I really think I'm more suited for Elizabeth. And they're like, are you sure? That's a lot smaller role. She said, no, I think it makes much more sense for me to play Elizabeth. And so it allowed Terry Garr to slip into the role of Inga.
Yeah, and Madeline Kahn killed it as Elizabeth. She was just annoying enough for you to be like, oh, she's just neurotic. So you don't end up hating her. Which someone could play that so that you don't like them at all.
Well, let me ask you this question, because I know we've had some discussion through our listeners group. We've had male and female input. I try to listen to the facts presented to me on the screen. I don't try to read necessarily outside of what's presented to me. I got the strong vibe, and I think it was reinforced after the whole scene with Frankenstein's creature. Elizabeth, she knows her way around town. Some people say no, she's still a virgin at this point in the movie. I think there's no way in hell that she didn't know her way around the ballpark.
Oh, I'm sure she tells everyone she's a virgin the first time she does it with them. I'm sure no one has any clue that she's not, but there has been a lot of D's up in that V for sure.
Oh, my.
I'm trying to think now, do I bleep that or not? So Frankenstein's creature's Schwanstucker is not the first Schwanstucker she's laid eyes on.
No, but clearly it's the best. Where to be like, I think I'm in love. Oh, I think I love him. I think I'm in love with this person.
Well, and I think the reason I knew, first of all, who acts the way she does when somebody you supposedly love or care about is getting ready for this long voyage, and you don't want them to touch you, hug you, kiss you. You don't want to do a thing with them, but you're so worried about keeping up with your appearance. I'm like, you're going out in the town. You're going to go caterwauling as soon as this guy gets, 5 seconds outside of the station.
Yep. That's so funny. And so the part where she's with the monster, because we touched on it a little bit, but when she's laying there, I mentioned that I don't think that scene could be, written now, nor could Blazing Saddles be made now. There's just, because you have to be relatively politically correct, but you need to be aware of how it might affect someone, and times have changed, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. But the way she is, while it is uncomfortably shaded like it could be a rape scene, the way she's acting, it's how when my husband and when he starts to get flirty with me, I'm like, oh no, stop. I'm just a girl. What? Oh no, I'd never do this, as a joke. And he does sometimes too. If I'm giving him a hug and being gross, he's like, oh, what is it? Oh, please, no, not before you take me to dinner. We just joke around, and that's how she is acting right now. She's like, no, please, no, I've never had this happen before. Oh, I'm such an innocent woman.
Right.
We're like, nah, we know you.
and it's,
I see you.
And it's reinforced the very next scene when they see them, the after smoke, they're both enjoying the cigarette in bed. And when he hears the music and Frankenstein's creature is lulled away, she has the line that I think, if you don't believe that she has had her own flings before, why would she use the words,
"Oh, you men are all alike. 7 or 8 quick ones and you're off with the boys to boast and brag. You better keep your mouth shut."
"Oh, you men are all alike. 7 or 8 times and you're off to go brag with the boys." 7 or 8 times. Now, how do you say that if you've never done anything before? You don't just make those words up.
Nope.
No, and I think this goes back to me actually being right one time. That she's definitely not the picture of innocence. So,
well, let's get back to.
But that's okay. You don't have to be.
No, but she does try to portray herself as this bastion of morality. And
well, I don't know if that is so much as she just is putting on the airs for Freddy. I mean, I think the whole time she's just using him. Like, look when she shows back up at the castle.
Using him.
He's worried about the creature in chains. He's worried about how everything kind of went, completely, tango uniform after the opera house debacle. And she's like, just stop worrying and just keep, holding the mirror for me and sit. You're not even allowed to sit even with me on this little chase lounge or whatever. You have to sit on the floor like my dog. And that's how she treats him. Like, you're a dog. Constantly. I expect you to be completely faithful to me, listen to me, obey me. I'm going to go out and do whatever I want.
Exactly.
Wow.
I know so many people like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank God. No, that's done and gone. I'm back. I've got a good wife now.
Yeah, you're good.
So you got your very own Inga.
I've got my Inga. Actually, I think I've got my Frau Bluka, but no, I'm just kidding. She's gonna listen.
Oh, that's even better.
No, I think Cloris. By the way, I love the fact that Cloris Leachman, who used to be was a winner of a Miss Chicago pageant and represented herself in a Miss USA pageant in the 40s, was beautiful, but always had no problem, basically making herself look bad for the character. She had no problem uglying herself up for the role, and I love that. I love that about an actress who's. I don't care what I look like in real life. That's not me. I need to play the character. And she did not hesitate to make herself look dowdy or bad.
Yeah, it's awesome.
In fact, I think...
Also, maybe don't tell your wife that she's your Frau. Maybe leave that part out.
Well, it could have a whole different joke, though, if I go, "Hey, you're my Frau Bluka." And I go...
I would hope, if you're married to the right person, that she would make the sound if you called her that.
Yeah, no, we definitely have we love to play. We love verbal sparring. We've got that kind of banter, and she's actually been a guest on the show, which has been really, really cool to have her insights, because one of the things she remembered growing up seeing the movie, you talked about yesterday with the whole "walk this way" line. Her whole basketball team, when she played varsity basketball in high school, loved the movie so much that they came out to walk this way. They always were like, "Everybody walk this way," and they would all dribble, and they all kind of lurched in like they were like Igor dribbling a basketball, and they did that every single game after seeing this movie. So she just said it's one of those things that has always stuck with her is Young Frankenstein. So how do you not love a woman who loves Young Frankenstein?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Let's get back to this minute here for a second, because there's a lot happening between what's going to be the honeymoon night. It's not that they're unfamiliar with each other. They've had apparently a couple of intellectual discussions, which, by the way, is what he calls it when he thinks he's getting away with something. He says, "We're not doing anything physical. It's an intellectual discussion." But she tells him,
"Hold on to your hat.
Keep the hat on." Crystal, I'm going to come at you from a female's perspective. Is there something about bringing a hat to bed? What's that all about?
I don't. Maybe it's a thing she has. I don't. You don't need to wear a hat as long as your socks are off. I don't care what you're wearing. But I don't think I'd request a hat on.
Like the top hat to bed. Play Abe Lincoln.
I wouldn't
start
be able
talking
to
about
stop
your
staring at it, and it'd probably get in the way.
Now, on the flip side, you did make a comment before we started rolling, I think, about the hair. Maybe she's got a thing about his hair, and says, cover that up.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That could 100% be it. She doesn't. She's like, wow, his personality's great, but that hair, leave your hat on, please. Don't take it off.
Tame that mane.
Yeah, that thing is crazy.
we as she goes off into the bathroom and he begins to change, he starts to realize, oh, I'm going to keep the hat on.
I'm holding on to it, darling.
And so he makes this little kind of you got the tone going on here. You know what's about to happen, and he's got sort of that innuendo in his voice. I love the fact that he goes to the original mirror. He goes past that original mirror that he initially spied Frau Blucher kissing the picture of Victor. And as he's at that same mirror, way back at the very beginning of the movie, when you hear Inga start singing the Trasylvanian lullaby, when she starts humming it or sort of singing it, lilting along with it, because there's no real words to it.
La dee da da, la dee da da, la 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 da, la da.
You see him as he takes a step forward, you get the double reflection. You get him in the mirror again and him looking at the screen. And to me, it was a callback to that filmmaking technique of watching two things in the room at the same time. Yeah. And I just loved it. I love the fact that we are back in the original room where Cloris Leachman's Frau Blucher brings him, and it used to be Victor's room, and now it's going to be the grandson's room with his bride. Mm-hmm. It just feels like it kind of pulls everything all back together.
It does, and it ties it all very nicely into that Frankenstein universe.
Crystal, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's good. I think that I like when movies tie up in the same spot. I mean, they don't always need to, but when you could be like, oh, okay, well, we're home. So we get to see him in his classroom at the very beginning, where he is just an uncomfortable, neurotic, angry man. And he gets to the house, into this room that he doesn't want to be in. He's looking at that painting of his grandfather, and he's like, oh, God, this is terrible. And he kind of yells at Frau to leave. And then at the end, you follow him into this room that was such a negative place. And now this is where he's gonna do it with his new wife. And he's happy, and he's leaving his unbrushed hair under the hat and growling to himself.
I want you to think for just a second, and Walt, even for you, because being the kind of background I have in literature and writing, and sometimes I may read more into things that may have been intended, I just want you to think, if you freeze frame at about second 56, the number of elements throughout the entire film that are represented in just this one shot. You've got which you loved, the collar that has gone boing when he goes, everybody act normal, bang, and it came apart. He's got his silk pajamas on that he had to put the robe on over to go exploring. The mirror is in the background. He's wearing the same tuxedo that he did the putting on the Ritz scene. He's in his room, and we're hearing the Trasylvanian lullaby that was composed specifically not only for the opening music by John Morris, but it was used as a mechanism of controlling the creature and helped actually manipulate him. So, because it's in the blood of all Frankensteins, the music. There's so much in just this one shot that is pulling all these things right back together. And to me, for all the problems we had last week with some of the things that felt rushed and weird, whether this was just movie magic, whether it just sort of all happened, I love how this minute is going to end. The idea that he's under a trance, so it brings in the music, it brings in the monster, it brings in the top hat and tails, it brings in the mirror, the room, the jammies. Inga's in the other room singing. It's just, to me, it's like it's a culmination of the entire picture in one just brief moment.
It is, and the only thing that's really missing here is the hillbilly hat. If only the hillbilly hat was there.
But he does have a hat on.
Yeah, and you're right, and it really does. It is a picture of the whole movie right here in this one scene. And
because if you say, well, where's the monster? If you look at how he's affected by this, you could say, oh, maybe that transference, maybe there's a bit of the monster in him. So even technically, the monster's present.
Yes, absolutely. And Elizabeth is the one singing. So
it's not Elizabeth, it's Inga. It's Inga singing.
Okay, yeah, I guess you're right. Because Elizabeth is singing,
no longer part of this picture.
Yeah, she's downstairs singing.
Oh no, she's over in the apartment in New York
or whatever. Yeah, that's right.
We're not going to get to that until tomorrow.
Reading a newspaper.
Oh yeah, he's got the Wall Street Journal out, wondering about how Daddy's party went.
But one thing too about this is that he is now the master of the castle. He is Dr. Frankenstein. And you think about how his life has changed, and he was on a path really to be just an old, angry, crusty curmudgeon stuck there with a wife who didn't love him and a terrible relationship. And when Herr Falkstein walks in, his whole life changes.
The entire life changed when that guy came in with the will.
With the will, yep. And that all led to the culmination of this.
Crystal, I know we're going to be wrapping this up here with a bow in just a minute, but when this moment we're talking about, we kind of brought some of the humor down to talk more about the artistic elements. One of the things Walt and I realized, and I want to get you to weigh in on this and see if you think we're, full of it. There are movies, and you think of movies as those things that you get popcorn and bubblegum and whatever, and you just go watch. And then there are films. There are things that are like, wow, this takes movie to another level. A scene like this helps reiterate my argument. This goes beyond just a movie. It is a true cinematic film. It's a masterpiece.
Yeah, it takes in, obviously, the difference between a film and a movie is the amount of artistic elements that go into it. And this movie is just well done. It's well made. Every shot looks like it's been planned for a specific reason. And it's a really, I wish that they had us watch this in film school.
I'm surprised you didn't.
We watched a lot of really not so great movies.
Because you know what's really cool about this, and again, we talked about this in the early credits because it being an older movie, we had like 4.5 minutes of nothing but credits to talk about. But they actually even recreated a lot of the same lighting and cinematography elements of a 30s picture because they wanted the long shadows. They were going for black and white, but they didn't want to shoot like a contemporary black and white or a more modern. They were striving for capturing the look and feel of an older film, even though it was a newer film. And just watching the framing and the composition, we've talked about that a whole lot, Walt, where you say, just freeze frame here and just look at how they composed this shot. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this really does have so many elements of film noir, of, every film shot in the 30s, and every monster movie ever made. And
only the good ones.
Only the good ones. The bad ones we're not even going to talk about. But it really is, this is such a classic movie, and to wrap it up with this scene is really amazing and fantastic.
Yeah, we've got a couple more minutes left, but as far as, because we're going to come back to them here before the end of the week, because we're going to actually, tomorrow we get to cut into, well, what's happening with Elizabeth? Obviously, we need to wrap up her story, and where's the monster? We don't even know what happened to him. We got to wrap up his story, but we will come back one more time in this same bedroom, but unfortunately, we will not have Crystal with us. She's going to hit the, what campaign are you dungeoning through in your D&D group? I used to do that when I was a kid.
What was that?
I used to do that when I was a kid. I played D&D, I guess, is if you're going to be a nerdy about it. But we used to do AD&D all the time, and I think that's why I loved video games, and I became a WoW junkie for forever because of that.
Yeah, it's super fun. I think we're doing Zhao's Legacy.
Okay.
Zhao's Legacy. It's one of our DM kind of helped build it from scratch. We just finished Prince of the Apocalypse, and before that we did The Lost Mine of Phandelver, and I think we're going to do The Yawning Portal.
Awesome. I think that is so cool. I mean, I remember growing up, and I know we've segued a bit. I know we need to let you get back in there because the DM's probably saying, well, what kind of character do you play?
I play a gnome ranger named Winland Hearthbound.
Very first character I ever created was a ranger, and it was the only one that managed to last until I stopped playing. We had a rule because parents were going all up in arms because apparently somebody took it too seriously or whatever, and they're like, oh my god, you can't play D&D because you're going to So we always said, okay, if your character dies, you had to rip up your character sheet, which was always tough, but we did that.
Oh, it's the worst.
Yes, so, but I had a ranger, and I didn't even know anything about it besides I had read Lord of the Rings, and I wanted so much to live in the Lord of the Rings world, and when I had a chance to get introduced to D&D, I'm like, oh my god, I'm a ranger! Because of course everybody wants to be the hero, right? Well, that's awesome. Well, I know your DM's probably wondering where the ranger went. So before we let you go, we had you for a couple of minutes. We had you actually introduced to this film thanks to being part of the show. I'm so glad you had a chance to see it. Any final thoughts you have, not just about this minute, but just Young Frankenstein in general?
I'm like I said before, I said yesterday, thank you for making me watch it. And I'm sad that I went most of my life all my life so far not seeing it, when this could have been one of my favorite movies for a really long time. And I'm glad we got to talk about it. And I got a good 2 minutes. And Dave D'Alessandro was awesome being a facilitator between us, because you guys were always in the back of my mind to get together and actually do this. And time sucks, but I moved. We have our studio set up, and I am good to go. Happy to do this with you guys. And I love Gene Wilder. So I'm excited to watch more movies of his that I haven't seen yet.
It has been an absolute pleasure to have you and to get your perspective. And you are a well-known voice and a very respected voice in the Movies by Minutes crowd. You're also a gamer, though, which, of course, I always find great because I love still to this day. Here I am in my late 40s, and I'll tear up any teenager on a video game. Just give me a chance. Crystal Beth,
Yes.
where can people get more of you?
Sure. You can find me on social media at the Crystal Beth, and you can listen to my podcast, Unlimited Lives Radio, and the Fifth Eleminute, where I do this exact format, but with the Fifth Element. Can't believe I forgot to say that yesterday. That's crazy. At www.thefiftheleminute.com.
Well, now I have another movie I'm going to subscribe and queue up. I love The Fifth Element, only because the first time I watched it, I hated it because I didn't know what I was watching. And now it is one of my all-time favorite movies. I mean, if it comes on, it's one of those movies, I don't care where it is, I'll start watching it from that point on because I love it that much.
Good.
It's a great flick. So, Walt,
really
do you agree or not?
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly. Okay. Yeah, and that is one of those, I think I've probably got about 4 or 5 movies that if it's on, I'm hooked.
You're watching it, yeah.
And that is one of them. And it's kind of an unusual one for me.
Yeah, but I love it.
It is. It's a great movie.
Well, somebody wants to learn a little bit more about the Wilder ride. Maybe they want to get involved with discussion. Maybe we missed something. Like, how did you forget? Or maybe our angry listeners out there saying, no, she is still a virgin. You guys are so foolish. Where can people go?
Well, if you disagree with this, the best place to come and air those grievances is in our listeners group. That's facebook.com/The Wilder Ride, and you'll find a button there to press and answer a couple questions, join our group, and there's some great discussion going on, and we would welcome your insight. And I would really love to know for our listeners what their ideas of Young Frankenstein were before they started listening to the podcast, and then now as we're getting towards the end, how they've come to appreciate the movie more, or if they've kind of burned out on it, or I know there's no way that could happen, but what their thoughts are. And if they're like Crystal, that it's now one of those movies that they never really knew about or had much interest in before, and then all of a sudden they realize what a great movie it is.
Yeah, we'd love the discussion. And by the way, it's a safe place. We keep it only about movies and Gene Wilder, not even just Gene Wilder, movies in general. We just like having fun talking about some of the blasts from the past, what we like now, what we liked that's coming for 30 and 40-year anniversaries. I hate saying that.
I know.
But we just have a really good time in the listeners group. And we encourage you to come on in. Even if you don't want to listen all the time, you only want to listen here and there, it's still a fun group to be part of.
It is, and it's a kind of a break from all the nonsense of politics and all the other crazy stuff going on, and just a good place to be able to hang out and talk.
All right, Crystal Beth, once again, thank you so much for being able to be part of this Wilder ride with us at last toward the very end, but I think you had a couple of really solid minutes.
I do too. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm really glad I got to make it.
All right, everybody, come on back tomorrow because we've got to continue on, and the aforementioned Dave D'Alessandro will be joining us for minute number 104. Thanks again, and
we'll much fun.
We'll look you up again when we decide what we're going to do for season 2, early 2019.
I love it.
Awesome, and I will. I'll be following you, and I'm definitely going to check out that Fifth Eleminute. So
we had fun with it. It's awesome. No alien minute, but it was fun.
Well, who knows? I like the humor ones. The Alien Minute's fun because of the depth, but like the Indiana Jones guys have me cracking up all the time because I sometimes wonder if they even like the movie anymore.
I know. I wonder that too. Oh, and I forgot to mention, Inga reminds me of Marion Ravenwood. That was something I meant to say. So I'm just saying it to you guys.
Okay, I like that. How?
Because she's that kind of strong woman that kind of, has a crush on him, but there's a mutual respect there. And she holds her own next to a really strong, powerful guy that's the lead of the movie without being too annoying. So she reminds me of how Marion Ravenwood was played.
And let's be very clear, we mean the Marion Ravenwood in Raiders, not Crystal Skull.
I don't want to think about the Marion Ravenwood in that because it's a damn shame what she did to herself.
Right. I totally agree. All right. Well, get to your dungeon. Hopefully you're not too far behind. Grab a couple of drinks and hopefully the dice roll your way. May they ever be in your favor.
Oh, yeah. All right.
All right. Take care, Crystal.
Bye-bye. See you, Crystal.
Bye-bye.
And you're going to have to come back tomorrow for minute number 104. Dave D'Alessandro will join us to actually wrap up the week and, for the most part, wrap up the movie.
Isn't that hard to believe?
We'll have one additional minute, but we're going to do something a little special. We're going to wait till Friday to explain what we're going to do with minute 106. But tomorrow is minute 104, where we will continue with Inga singing in the background, where we see Dr. Frankenstein touching his temples like something feels wrong. We're not sure why. And we will end minute 104 with Dr. Frankenstein approaching the bed, walking and moaning, much like his creature once did. To find out what that's all about, you got to come back tomorrow for this, The Wilder Ride.
Where's your stovetop hat?
I got a stovepipe for you.
Hopefully not for me.
Not for you. Let's see what's under. You know what? She said keep the hat on, but didn't say where to put it.
That's true.
It could have been like, like that Saturday Night Live. It's just, instead of in the box, it's my dick in a hat.
Yeah, just be creative.